Are there any examples already of the community influencing the direction you guys are going with this game?
Um, yes, but they're right now they've been pretty pretty low level, like interaction level things. Like we see players, like we've done a couple of community events and we see how they're interacting in the game world, and there are things about how we handle trap placement, things about how you interact with the building system that have been a little rough around the edges that sort of we internally have let go because we're used to them. But then when you get them in front of the players, you're like, yeah, this is the same. We can see the same pattern over and over again. People having trouble with. So at those moments of UX that we've sort of the user experience, we've learned from that. And one of the cool things about the evolution into Epic 4.0, which is sort of our new online version of us, is that we've also started a user experience lab here, and so we're bringing people in and testing them that way through pretty rigorous scientific ways, and that's been a huge help there. And so we're bringing in people that way, and that's another way that effectively the community is contributing because we're getting them in and we're just saying, yeah, we're gonna run you some tests, like check this out, and then getting reports and then making adjustments from it. So that just the interaction in traps and the interaction with some of the building features has been very enlightening. When you get in the hands of people that haven't grown up with it from the beginning.
And when it comes to the level of gameplay, can you talk about how you've designed the game for newbies as well as more veteran players that can play together cohesively?
Yeah, we spent a bunch of time wondering, when we started out building the game, like how we would juggle long-term sustainment and advancement against the barriers of entry of like having a character who's super high level versus a low level new player. And one of the things we decided early on was that we really wanted to have the ability to have more advanced players to be able to share equipment and weapons with players who are who are newer to the game. And so because it just feels like in a traditional RPG, and granted, MMOs have begun to solve this through sidekicking and piggybacking systems that work that way, and they've been trying for many years. But the way we decided to handle it is that we wanted you to say, hey, if your buddy has an awesome freeze ray schematic and he builds it, he could just give it to you. You're a new player. You can run around with that freeze ray and have a great time freezing enemies and seeing how cool those things are. Whereas the old school way of like, if your buddy has an awesome sword, he can't give it to you, and therefore you don't have that feeling of power that you do for actually doing it yourself. And so that level of abstraction for us lets you be able to share things in that. And that's part and parcel with our itemization model, which is like, more bound to the individual campaign worlds than permanent throughout the whole character growth, And so that's important to us. We wanted to constrain the power growth to a certain level where, like, you're not sad to have newer players with you, because the bonuses that your fortresses all provide are stacking, and they're part of the whole overall. So everybody's there. It's always better to have partners in the game. It's never a point of like, oh, I don't want you here because you're dragging down the level. It's like, no, they're always additive. And since we have a bit of an action component too, a guy who's good with a gun is still a guy who's good with a gun, and then so that's it's cool. Like we just spent a bunch of time really wanting to make sure that people could play together, because building is a sort of highly social like game.
Can you explain free to win and how that has influenced the way you guys have orchestrated the free to play model here?
Yeah, my view of sort of free to win and sort of all the modern like ways that this has been going down in the industry is that there are just models where players who have a lot of time and players who have money can sort of work, can coexist in a way that feels fair to them. And like there's a lot of companies that are beginning to do it. Riot's being one of them, as one of the leaders in the industry right now in terms of treating their players well and letting people who want to spend money do it, but players who have time do it as well. So we see our model to be similar to that, where if you have a lot of time, you can acquire the same things that somebody with a lot of money can do. If it has to do with the gameplay level stuff, that's really our focus. If it has to do with the influencing gameplay in any meaningful way, we want to make it fair for people with time and people with money to sort of interact there. And that's sort of our overall goal. It gets a little, it certainly was a little bit dodgy or 3 years ago or so in sort of the primitive world. But I think game companies are starting to get it, and players are starting to understand. They're sort of coming to this nice, more harmonious place than where they were 3 years ago. And we are super sensitive to that, because there are people in the building who have been very, very vigilant in providing the sort of player perspective on that, which is like, provide value. Don't make me feel like, this game is ripping me off. And like, we from the very top, from Tim Sweeney all the way down, it's like, no, we're going to make sure that we provide value at every step of, when people engage with the thing. Because, if the game stops being fun because of a business model, then everybody loses. And so that's our sort of high level philosophy.